And it's a little bit crazy, these three guys getting together. It's taken 2 weeks for them to get together. As I said, they met up for maybe, I think it's said to be 30 minutes. So let's have a look what was gained from their massive get-together. Remember, Luxon's going to do this and do it quickly, and we're going to get through it easily. And what actually happened in their meet-up today. Well, what we know what happened, because obviously what happened behind closed doors was pretty quiet. But I have to say again, we've said this all the way through. Luxon has been very much, we're not talking about negotiations in front of the camera. We're not going to do that. But, man, I tell you what, the other guys are talking. David Seymour had a few jabs there last night. It was said today very clearly that Winston was actually expected in Wellington yesterday, and he just didn't show up. And Seymour had a bit of a crack, subtly, but a bit of a crack. And so we'll see how this pans out from today's meeting. Let's have a look, shall we?
Positive. That's how coalition talks were described today, as Christopher Luxon finally got around a table with New Zealand First Winston Peters and ex-David Seymour. But they took less than an hour. Negotiations dragging on nearly 2 weeks after the election result was finalised. So what are the sticking points? Senior political reporter Benedict Collins has more.
Riding shotgun, Winston Peters in the front seat, emerging from negotiation talks at the Pullman Hotel in Auckland today. And this photo, proof that the three leaders finally...
This is so funny because they say in this, I think, they all tweeted out exactly the same photo. It's like they were saying, see, we were in the same room. And they're saying it like, I don't know about you, if you haven't been involved with divorce or like as a child or an adult, but they were saying it like, you know, they finally got in the same room like two feuding exes trying to settle down how they're going to how they're going to split up the care of the children. That's how it comes across.
They sat around a table together.
It's been more than a month since the general election and nearly 2 weeks since special votes were finalised. And only just now has Christopher Luxon managed to get Winston Peters and David Seymour into the same room.
Christopher Luxon has previously talked up his speedy negotiating skills and his desire for a quick deal.
I kind of wonder what's taking them so long.
Quicker the better. It's nicer for the public.
I think they just need to take their time to do the right thing.
There's three people that don't get on with each other.
Ex-leader says today's meeting was worth it.
Look, I think it was positive, optimistic and hopeful.
I just put a tweet out when I was watching this earlier. David Seymour saying positive, optimistic and hopeful. That's what someone says. Like, let's say there's a spokesperson for a family whose elderly grandfather is on life support. That's what they say. They say we're positive, we're hopeful. It's how it's described it. And then I thought, actually, an elderly person on life support, that's probably about right, actually. So David Seymour maybe inadvertently put it out there exactly as we would expect it to be going on.
For what this government can do to get stuck in.
The meeting with the three leaders was brief, less than an hour. One big sticking point is National's tax plan. New Zealand First objects to allowing foreign buyers back into our housing market. ACT's not sure it stacks up either.
So I'm not concerned about whether they do it. I am concerned about whether it will raise sufficient revenue.
Yeah.
One former National leader.
So I mean, you've got to give credit where credit's due. We know where Seymour sits. I described him a couple of weeks ago as sort of the equivalent on the other side of Sue Bradford. Sue Bradford never wavered from her beliefs. A lot of people in politics sort of bend and change and they move away from why they were originally there. She never did. Got to respect her for that, whether you like her or not. It's a little bit the same with David Seymour. He seems to be truly a true believer in the policies he wanted to put out there. So as a true believer, you would expect him to say tax cuts are good, but if they can't happen, we shouldn't do them, which is kind of what he's saying. So, you know, I don't agree with David Seymour on very much, but credit where credit's due about consistency, I got to say.
They're emerging from the hotel on unrelated business.
Hey, Jan, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Nice to see you. Good to see you. Hey, I tell you, you're not here for me.
Simon Bridges famously ruled out working with Winston Peters, saying he just can't be trusted. Today's talks coming after Winston Peters didn't turn up in Wellington yesterday. The other leaders flying back to Auckland late last night.
Not everyone showed up, but hey, what can you do?
If you missed that, it was a bit, the audio wasn't as good. Not everyone showed up, but hey, what can you do? Says David Seymour of Winston Peters. So we now know they both expected Peters in Wellington yesterday. He just didn't go.
A great day. We've had a great series of engagements with both parties. It's been fantastic.
Mr. Peters also missed out on dinner with his colleagues in the capital. they'd been enjoying some foreign kai.
Well, the true alignment will be evident once our government is sworn in and we prevail for 9 years.
But negotiations look like they'll take a while yet, with no party wanting to be taken for a ride.
And Benedict joins us now. Kia ora, Benedict. So has a face-to-face meant things are going to speed up?
Well, you'd certainly hope so, right? It does seem like it's taken an extraordinarily long time for these three political leaders to get in the one room together, especially given, National's really strong performance on the night and Christopher Luxon's tough talk about getting a deal done fast. It has taken a really long time. But you need to keep in mind here that, especially for New Zealand First and for ACT, it's not in their best interest to rush here, right? This coalition deal that they strike, this governing deal that they strike, this will affect everything that they can do for the next 3 years. They can't say in a year's time, oh, we'd like to do this, if it isn't in this deal. So they need to take their time and get things right.
OK, so what can we expect next?
Well, these talks, they're going to go on into the night tonight, and I'm told they're pretty fiery. I'm told that, each party is really scrapping for every policy that they can. ACT and New Zealand First, they're going to want to reward the people who have voted for them. So these talks are going to go on to tonight, and understand that the talks are also going to continue in Auckland tomorrow, and it doesn't look like we're going to strike a deal tomorrow at least.
All right, watch the space.
There you go, watch this space indeed. So, when they talk about fiery talks and going on late into the night, I mean, they're giving it a crack, but it'll be interesting to see if they can actually get it. Rob says the media is blowing this out of way out. The media is blowing this out of way. That's probably way out of proportion, I'm guessing. Did the media forget 96? 96 was much worse. Mind you, we're not there yet, Rob. I think it was the second week of December. They finally did one, and it was 6 weeks, and we're already at 4 weeks post-election. So, But I think the biggest thing that I believe why criticism is appropriate is this has been Luxon's conversation the whole time. Luxon's been saying, I'm a businessman, I'm a negotiator, we'll get it done, we'll hit the ground running, we'll put out a budget before Christmas, we'll be working right up until Christmas Day, the first 100 days. So the naivety of Christopher Luxon coming from the business world. Now, what I'll do next is I'll play the clip from Bomber Show, because this sort of question and commentary leads quite well into it. But I think part of it is the naivety of Christopher Luxon thinking that his business skills are transposable directly into politicians, into political speak, into political, negotiation. One of the best points made in this conversation, and I'll play it for you not to give too many spoilers away, is I think it's Matthew Hooton says the difference between negotiating in business and negotiating in politics is in business you can walk away. So in business, if you want to try and merger, or you want to try and join another company or buy another company, if it doesn't work, you just go, oh, well, didn't work. We'll keep going with our own business. You can't walk away in this. In business, often the bigger business has the power, and the smaller business is the ones that can't walk away because maybe they're in a position that this is their last chance to get acquired or something. But in this instance, the bigger party actually is almost the one who isn't in the strong position, because if it doesn't get the smaller ones, then it can't form a government. So yeah, I think everybody can remember, if we stop and think about what happened in 96. The other thing though, in 1996, it was Winston Peters that held it up. And that's part of his legacy, that other parties have decided not to work with him. And as soon as Luxon ruled him in and he went on a surge and got over the line, this is a headache that Luxon's created for himself. If it was, I tell you something, if it was just ACT and National, we'd have a government by now. Luxon ruled in Winston. Luxon has given himself this headache. Alex, thank you for the $5 super chat, says, my opinion on letting foreign house buyers back into New Zealand is a huge mistake. Housing is way too expensive. Yeah, and it's obvious what's going to happen. The 1.8, 1.7, $1.6 million houses all of a sudden will be $2 million, because then the pool of potential purchasers will not just be well-off New Zealanders who can afford a $1.7 million house, but the world. Anyone who wants to purchase over here. And remember, look, we don't get access to these people, but we've got a couple of questions that no one's ever asked and National's never answered. The first is, what about the farms? Remember, this tax is for houses or properties over $2 million. Does that include a $20 million sheep station? What if foreign nationals just come in and buy up a ton of farms? They're over $2 million, and yep, there'll be a tax on them. No one asked that question in the election cycle. And the second one is, the National Party was saying these people who are going to buy these houses aren't going to buy the $2.01 million houses. They're going to buy the $6 to $10 million houses. Who says? Who says they're not going to buy $22 million houses and have a literal land bank in New Zealand, and then when they want to, come and retire to New Zealand and then buy their $20 million property? So the $2 million market, and I think they say in this commentary, or they say during this podcast, 4/5 of that is in Auckland. So Aucklanders, that market is going to impact the 1.5 to $2 million houses, which in turn, the people who are now sitting on 1.2 million, they'll go, oh, there's a gap in the market at 1.5. Let's add a couple of $100K. The ones that are that are sitting on $1 million will see there's a gap in the $1.2 million market, and they say, hey, let's give it a crack at 1.15. That's what it's going to do. It's going to push them all up, and it's going to make it harder at the bottom end when what would have been in Auckland a $900,000 house, entry level in Auckland, now becomes a $1.1 million house. There's just no way it can't happen. There's just no way it can't put pressure on the housing market.